Coogs. House Willie Fritz and the Houston Cougars took center stage at Big 12 Media Days. And Willie is excited about this team for reasons that you couldn't even imagine if you looked at last year's roster. Let's hear from him.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, today's podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to talk about all things Cougs, whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater came to stop by. Thank you for making us your first, second, third. We got a lot of content after today coming off of Big 12 Media Days, and boy, it was a ton of fun to get there in person. Got to sit down with Willie Fritz for a long time here and really appreciated he and his crew taking the time. I thought all four players, I thought even Shasta, who we splice in here in a second, were a ton of fun in this process. I really enjoyed getting to talk to them about the season. And again, 2 years in a row, Houston's gone 4-8. I think it stands to reason that they're going to be better than that this upcoming season. They've got all the confidence in the world and lots of great reasons why. Willie talking extensively about how this team's depth gives them confidence they can be a stronger team this year. And really, I was impressed with a lot of the things he had to say on that front. I also wrapped the episode with some of my kind of like first thoughts and first impressions from media days as well, live and in the action themselves. There's also a little bit of Shasta missed in here as well. But let's hear from Willie and the crew right now.
Locked on Coogs here, joined by Coach Willie Fritz, second Big 12 Media Days. Willie, how are we doing today?
Doing fantastic.
Fantastic. Making the rounds. I got to ask, I typically open with a food question. I'm going to barbecue, Tex-Mex, Cajun. You got a choice?
You know, I'm from Kansas City, so I love the barbecue in Houston, but I've been around some good barbecue all my life. I love the Tex-Mex. I think we've got that cornered.
Cornered.
Everybody says they're the best barbecue, doesn't matter where you are, but Tex-Mex outstanding.
So Tex-Mex, you're going to go flour, corn tortilla?
I do.
Which one?
Flour.
Flour.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You know, I think much like a breakfast taco and a flour tortilla kind of start the day. We're like kicking off first day of school kind of vibes here at Big 12 Media Day. I asked you in the big deal, but I want to keep asking more. There's a lot of excitement around the program, and I'm having a hard time selling to national folks like there's reasons to be excited when it's 4-8 to 4-8, and I'm like, no, like there's things changing here. Like even though they were 4-8 a year ago, like it's a lot of momentum and turnover and change. You mentioned the depth being a big part of that. What do you mean by depth besides just competing for positions, but what else?
Well, like the offensive line, for instance. We've got two guys coming back who started almost every game last year. One of them started every game, Demetrius Hunter, and then David Ndukwe, I think, started 10 games at left tackle. But we added 5 guys who've got Division I starting experience at some really good schools. You know, so now we got 7 there. We redshirted a couple guys that we think have got a chance. We got a backup that played quite a bit last year. So now, you know, we got 10 guys that we're not afraid to have go out on the field and play. We didn't have that last year. You know, tight end wise, I think we've really upgraded. We got Jaden York coming back, played a lot of football for us, but now we got Luke McCary, really good player at Tulsa. And we got Tanner Kozel, you know, 6'7", 250-pound tight end from Ball State.
Very coveted.
Oh, yeah.
He chose Houston over a lot of places.
Yes, he did. Smart kid. But that's what I'm talking about. We got some competition. We got quality competition. I've had competition before, but whoever happened to be standing was the guy who went out and played. We got some guys that could. Hey, our secondary, I think I counted it up. And, you know, out of the 5 positions, when you talk about the 2 corners, 2 safeties, your nickel back, we got 11 guys right now that'll probably play in the first game. You know, those 5 positions. That's a lot. Now we'll pare that down a little bit when we start figuring out who can do what and what they're capable of doing. And because there's nothing like a real game to play to evaluate somebody. But that's what I'm talking about with them.
A year ago, the competition was kind of at the quarterback spot. Conner steps in And I don't mean to say it's his show like he hadn't earned it, right? But presumed leader in a lot of ways on that front. You mentioned in the big presser that he's healthier, he's feeling better. I really like the comparison of him and what you had in Pratt at Tulane, Nagel back. What do you see in Conner and Pratt that is similar, and how can you have the same kind of success you had with them at Tulane?
They're very similar mindsets. They got different deliveries with the football. There's no question about that. But they're both really smart. They're both tough. They're both team guys first. They both have the ability to run as well. There are, a dual threat quarterback, and I think you got to have dual threat quarterbacks in this day and age. So there are some similarities. What we got to do is really put the magnifying glass on Conner and figure out what does he do best in our system, and really emphasize that and keep him away from maybe some other things. That's also not just Conner. That's also the offensive line, the tight ends, wide receivers, the running backs. So I'm excited about seeing what he can do. I think he's a better athlete than people give him credit for as well.
Well, that's the 5-star athlete out of high school that everyone saw, and we hadn't gotten to see really since then. You got a bunch of other guys that remind me of the success that Tulane I think was making me excited about this season. I think Rashawn at the running back spot looks a lot like Tajay in a lot of ways, but I know that's a crowded room. You mentioned competition. There's not a running back here today to ask, so I'll ask you, what can you tell me about the competition in that room? That's a complicated one.
It's fantastic. It really is. Rashawn Sanford, like you talked about, they're all tough guys. They all got good speed. They all can run in between the tackles, and they also can run on the perimeter. They've got varying degrees of pass catching ability, but most of them are pretty darn good catching the ball, running routes. They're good at blocking, which is a lost art for running backs. Most of the
they don't do that 7-on-7.
They don't like doing that at all. I was supposed to pick him up. Yeah, the guys just kill the quarterback. But they do a very good job of being able to do everything. Dean Conner from Rice, I think he's got outstanding ability in all those different areas. Stacy Sneed, great speed, tough guy. He's not the biggest guy in the world, 185 pounds, but he's tough as a boot. DJ Butler had some success last year, banged up, true freshman. We had to throw him in the fray, but he's got a lot of good ability. And Jamarian Burnett is another guy, big dude, same thing, true freshman, threw him in the mix. This Big 12 football is different than high school football.
But I thought he performed pretty well for a few freshman year.
There's some things he did really well. That's what you got to look at. It also is, that first year, you can't replicate that in spring ball, and you can't replicate it in preseason camp, playing real Big 12 football games. So those guys are going to, that's going to help them out a bunch.
And switching sides to the defense, because I know your time's limited. You got a busy day. Defense was what you hung your hat on here.
Time you follow us.
Okay, fair enough.
The ones I wanted.
Well, then let's spend some time on defense then, because last year defense was one of the best in the country, and for what it's worth, I think even the stats underscored how good it was, right? And it was very successful. There have been a lot of changes. Austin comes in with a lot of success for a guy his age, a pretty strong resume, and I'd argue a system that, at least for me watching it on TV, is pretty complicated. How has the transition been from your vantage point? What have you seen different? Because it is something I think that this team, on a roster perspective, has some strength in.
Yeah, he does. He runs an odd front and an even front, which is the same thing we did last year. Same thing. You got to figure out, what do your guys do well? What don't they do well? Don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. Just figure that out, and then that'll be your identity. Come week 3, week 4, something like that. But I like where we're at in all 3 levels.
But before we get too far, summer sports are in full swing. Pun only kind of intended. Look, swinging tennis rackets, baseball bats, swing your leg in soccer. Everything is happening this summer, and it's all happening over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, where you can get in on the action. Look, you're already following all of that action anyway. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get into the game when your buddies are out there getting sunburned or toasted somewhere else. You can make sure that you're cooking something up at home. Now, I like placing same game parlays, kind of stacking up my wins for better earnings across the board here. But I will say I like the in-game live game catch it after it started action as well. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get 150 bucks back in bonus bets if your first bet hit. With FanDuel app today, or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Out, and then that'll be your identity, come week 3, week 4, something like that. But I like where we're at in all 3 levels. The front, the linebackers, the defensive secondary. I think we added some good kids in the portal. I think we signed some really, really good high school kids. We'll see if they're ready to help us this year or if it's going to be another year. We don't know. We'll figure that out. We've got some good returners coming back. The 2 kids that are here at Media Day, Carlos Allen. He's got a chance to be.
Looks good.
I think he's got a chance to be one of the better D linemen, interior defensive linemen in the conference. Latrell McCutcheon. I think he's a draftable kid. I really do. I've had a bunch of DBs who've been drafted. I think he certainly can do that. So we got a lot of experience coming back and depth, and it's exciting. And I like the way that, just like I talked about how Slade touches all areas of the offense, Austin does the same thing. He does a really good job of meeting with a lot of different groups and also coaching a lot of different groups. Sometimes coordinators get tied into linebackers or safeties or whatever the case may be defensively. He really does a good job with all of them.
What was that process like in bringing Austin in? Because there are a lot of people that say, SEC coordinator, why'd you leave? And you pulled him into Houston. And frankly, again, the defense was successful last year, but you pulled him into Houston kind of while there was this period in the portal being open. Anyone could have left. So who knows, I don't think that would have been easy. How'd you pull Austin over? Because that's a big jump.
He worked for a really close friend of mine, Will Hall at Southern Miss, and he really enjoyed how Will did things. And Will and I are very similar in our approach to coaching and life and all those kind of different things. So it wasn't a real hard sell. He was excited about the opportunity to come to Houston. And he knows what we can do there. I told him, hey, here's the things we can accomplish and here's why we can accomplish them. And after he went out and recruited one recruiting cycle with us, he was like, you're right. This is different here in the city of Houston.
It is different. And one thing I've noticed on my show is in recruiting, there is a ton of excitement about 2026 because of some of the big names and the high rankings and the whatnot. And frankly, you guys have had a lot of success, to your credit, on that in that group. But that is a year. Those guys can't show up to campus till January. How do you combat that? Do you care about that? How do you focus on the task at hand with that being so exciting down the road?
You just got to do both. We signed a great class last year. Really good. We've got all of them in right now. Some of them were there for spring football. I'm excited about our defensive linemen that we signed, our wideouts. I think the quarterback that we signed, Austin Carlisle, is a really good football player. So we signed a bunch of guys, 20 of them for 2025. And we want to do that in 26. We want to do it in 27. We want to do it in 28. We want to be a high school program. That's what we want to be. We don't want to be trying to find a quick fix every year. Hey, we're going to use the portal to our advantage. Maybe there's a position where, due to injury or attrition, we lost some guys and we need to fix that position in a hurry. And he needs to have a little bit of experience under his belt. But we really, really want to be a high school program, and we're lucky with our location.
Well, and I know Austin, Austin's a great kid. You got some great kids too. It's a big part of that. Last thing, and I'll get you out of here. Anonymous coach, and you can say what you want to say about anonymous coach, saying whatever, on 3 said he thinks Houston's still a year away. I think he's full of crap, but I want to hear why you think he's full of crap, because I think this year you're about to shock some people, and I'd like to be at the front. It was an anonymous coach. No, it said the quote was anonymous.
Isn't it amazing what people say when it's anonymous? That's why I don't like doing it. People say off the record. I said I don't want to answer it if it's off the record. But hey, everybody's got their own opinion. That's fine. I just feel like we've added some good kids, and we're gonna have to do a good job of coaching them and figuring out quickly what they're capable of and staying away from the things they're not capable of. We got to stay healthy during preseason camp. I like the fact that we're in the city of Houston, our first 3 ball games. I just, I'm looking forward to going to war with these guys. I think we got some good kids, and I like our coaching staff. It's fun to be around good people every day, both players, athletic training staff, social media, whatever it is, and coaches, and that makes it enjoyable. We've got that. And when they're talented, that certainly makes it a lot better.
Talent helps. You got a lot more coming back and some new faces that add some of that too. Willie Fritz, thank you for being Locked On Coogs today. Thank you for all the work you're doing media day to day. I know it's an exhausting one, but we appreciate having you. Thank you. Take care. Go Coogs. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs here with Shasta, the Houston Cougars of Big 12 Media Days. Shasta, we're going to do thumbs up, thumbs down. All right. So thumbs up, thumbs down. Pretty simple. I'm going to give you one of you yes or no. Yes or no. All right. So flour tortillas on tacos. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Thinking. Mostly thumb up. Mostly. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Talk to me. Barbecue sauce on your brisket. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Down. No sauce for Shasta. Gotcha. All right. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Talking about the flight in this morning. Have you heard about that one? Thumbs down. No flight in this. Gotcha. All right. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Whatever you had for dinner last night. Thumbs up. Good deal. Is that a cake? Pie? Brisket? No. 4 corners? Pizza. Nice. All right. Pizza. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Pineapple. No, thumbs down. Pepperoni. Thumbs up. Gotcha. Good deal. All right. So thumbs up, thumbs down. Saturday afternoon in August. Too hot. Now, Saturday night in October. Thumbs up. There you go. And here's the real one. A Saturday championship game at Jerry World over in Arlington. Double thumbs up. Thank you from Shasta. Thumbs up, thumbs down with Shasta. Thanks for coming on today, man. NIL stories changed the game, and the entire game here at Big 12 Media Days. I'm Mr. Locked On Coogs, Parker Ainsworth. And man, if there is one phrase that's been said over and over and over again, it has been the idea of NIL, what's fair, what's not fair. Full disclosure and transparency, I do think this has a lot to do with Texas Tech and Joe McGuire pulling in last minute a big 5-star tackle last week, July 4th, kind of swooped in out of nowhere to get Ojo. Ojo's a big 6'6", 6'7", 5-star, could start very soon, 2026 kid. Tech went in the top 4, picking Tech anyway. Sounds like agent Derek Shelby reported there's a $5.1 million deal involved in that. And coming into this week, you then bleed into media days, and all anyone wants to talk about is how to get a grip and a handle on that. I don't think that any of the 16 coaches agree with any of the others about what that looks like. I think that's dramatically different for any and everyone. I do think, for what it's worth, that there are probably more people in the Willie Fritz Houston camp of like, hey, give me an even playing field and we'll play ball, and I think we've got a shot. I think, frankly, for what it's worth, it sounds like there's a lot of coaches that feel that way about Houston too. And some off conversations, whatever other content folks and people do too. I think they see that as kind of a discrepancy that hurts Houston. But as we're seeing here, like, Houston's finding ways to acquire talent anyway. Number of talented players here representing Houston. We're talking about recruiting in Houston and so on. But NIL being a big mainstay of the conversation here has been interesting because it feels like it's one of two things anyone wants to talk about, right? And it's interesting to think about as one of the two things people want to talk about when you think about Houston and the Big 12, because everyone wanted some sort of regulations, some sort of rules and limits, and the different round tables. Coaches mentioned it throughout. I thought Coach Prime, while I don't give him a lot of credit when it's not due to his credit, Coach Prime did mention that he thought it was interesting that a couple years back he was the bad guy for doing the NILs, for doing the transfer portals, for hitting all that up, etc. And now it's just kind of commonplace. To his credit, that's absolutely how things have happened and unfolded. I also thought it was interesting to hear Willie Fritz in the same roundtable ask some coaches about NIL and transfer portals and stuff like that. Everyone had kind of some very similar kind of things to say to one another, very simple, mundane, like, it's not the same game it used to be. You got to recruit your guys. Da, da, da. Willie Fritz, I thought, was quick, sharp, and pointed in pointing out that a perhaps more tangible piece of legislation, something that could be done, is the idea of stopping some of the tampering. And we know at Houston, a number of players have found a school very quickly after entering the transfer portal. And that implies a level of tampering has happened. Obviously, there's no confirmation. I'm not here to report that. It's not really my job. But with Willie Fritz doing that, I think he pointed to a problem that other schools are feeling too. But from a Houston perspective, you've lost a number of athletes that might not have hit the portal had they not talked about it in whatever realms that they did, right? And so I thought Houston was well represented in that front. I thought Willie did a very professional job of holding himself up through things. Really liked the players we got to talk to as well. They're excited. I think Willie had some strength in his resolve talking about the season. Not the same fired up kind of guy he's been at different times, but definitely a confident guy that has a pretty good feeling about where things are going. Just saw the trail walk by. Trell's got a great looking suit on, black, the red tie. Good move there. I also think as far as this roundtable things go, it was interesting to hear other coaches talk about this, that, and the other in regards to their specific programs. I don't know that there's a program set up to defy expectations more than Houston. Maybe that's because expectations nationally might not be that high for Houston. Maybe that's because last year they went 4-8. When I asked Willie specifically about that, and you'll see the interviews, see those kind of things, but he kept going back to this idea that this year's team has had a lot more competition for spots, and that's something you want to have as a coaching staff. We'll play through the interview some too, but he really, really pushed that as a key part of this year's team and program. There was another big word that's kind of circulated the full conversation, all the coaches, everybody, not just Willie here, and that word has been parity. Now, parity is an interesting phrase because I think we all agree that we like it, and every coach here probably said it 10, 15, a dozen, a lot of times, right? And parity is something I think we all want. Parity is something I think that we all need. And I think, as I mentioned on the Locked On Crossover show, the other folks that were here yesterday, I think there's a kind of good conference, there's a kind of good competition where fans want parity. They want anyone can win on a given Saturday. It produces a good product week in, week out that's entertaining for the fans. But we also heard Brett Yormark talk about how the team kind of needs a couple of, my words, not his, bell cows, right? Folks that kind of carry the conference from a national perspective, the villain. Y'all call me a basketball guy too much, and I understand that. Probably fair criticism. But in the NBA, there was this conversation about how it's the same couple teams every year. It's the same couple of teams every year. It's the Jordan Bulls. It's those Duncan Spurs. It's the Steph Curry Warriors, the Miami Heat, right? Whatever the case, that was your villain, your dynasty, your super team, right? But truthfully, ratings were better for that sport on television when there was a super team, when there was a bad guy. The Big 12 was very much operating like the last 7-8 years of NBA basketball, where like a different team wins every year, and that's kind of fun because I think next year could be the Rockets, right? That's a different show, different. Talk to Jackson Gatlin about that. But That being the case, the NBA's ratings are down. Fans don't actually appear to want that in the same kind of way as like the David and Goliath, because the Goliath is the constant villain, the Death Star, the whatever. You want to see the dynasty build, and then about the time they start winning, you want to see people take them down. And this conference doesn't have that. Since Texas and Oklahoma left, Oklahoma was kind of that for this conference. Texas thought they were, but Oklahoma was kind of that for this conference, right? And we're kind of looking for who that could be. Is it Texas Tech and their money? Is it BYU and their money? Is it Houston and the way they're keeping kids home in the 2024 5 and 6 classes? Who turns into that bully and bad guy in this conference, right? That's an interesting storyline given how much the coaches talked about parity, because the consensus right now is that is not what's happening, right? That the conference is not set up like that, right? That the conference is set up in a way where you've got an even playing field across the board, right? And I think Dundee posed like, if you're 8-4 in this conference, you're really good. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, the country doesn't want to watch 8-4 football. That's not actually what the country wants out of the Big 12 conference. Your conference champion can't be 10-3. You want those 12-1s, right? You want those 13-0s. The conference championship came under your belt, and that's fascinating, right? That is truly fascinating. Now, as far as what's more realistic, I think this year in the conference, like 9-3 is going to be really freaking good. I was talking to Bobby from Scott and Holman folks, and he was like, what do you think? I was like, I look at this schedule and think like there's a real world this team is 8-4. I don't think that's do I think that's like really good for this team this year at this stage in the rebuild? Probably. Do I think that's crazy? No. Do I think 8-4 can win the conference? I think it takes some tiebreakers, but like this conference is super even right now, which ultimately I think is a fun thing. I like that product where it's like a different team every week. I like the NBA product where a different team wins every year. I think a national audience doesn't. I think the TV storylines and narratives don't. I can tell you right now, it does not sound the college football playoff likes that option. They want one dominant team and then maybe a team here or there to come in the 5th and 6th spots or whatever of the football playoff. Lots of different opinions there. It does make interesting, though, when everyone can agree that this is a conference full of parity. That's the overriding idea here, that you also seem to have a strong push from all 16 coaches and commissioner across the board for the 5+11 16-team playoff model. I believe it was Leipold, the Kansas coach, that mentioned, but I thought it was clever to point out that if you make it 16 teams and no buys, then you theoretically you play your regular season for seeding in that playoff to ultimately get a home game. And the value of that home game is important in the first round of the playoffs. Kind of like we saw like last year's playoffs, the 1 through 4 seed got a bye, 5 through 8 got a home first round of the playoff, right? That's important for revenue. That's important for everything. And I thought that was an interesting argument for the 16-team playoff as well, and that it could strengthen your regular season because you're always playing for a home game. It's not just you're playing for a bye, and do you really want to buy or whatever, right? From a revenue perspective, that is. And so all fascinating, all interesting. I think they're about to run me off the stage here, but more other first thoughts. Glad Coach Prime is here and healthy. I know it's not a Houston thing, but I'm glad he's here and healthy. I really appreciated the guys they brought here. I thought Boogie did a great job. That dude's a leader. That dude is a leader. Hope you enjoy that interview later. Really like what Latrell had to say. Really like what Willie had to say. Shasta was fun. Anyway, more on that fun later. Locked on Coogs bringing you more each and every year at Locked on Coogs. Locked on Coogs coming from Big 12 Media Days. So sorry if there's other noise going on around me. More information, more things on the Houston Cougars each and every day. Locked on Coogs, from Locked On Podcast. Now use your team every day. Go Coogs.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.